Hello, and welcome back to Navia's pre-release analysis. I did change up the order of things a little bit to make a little bit more sense. Like, I'll be starting with Navia's passives instead of the artifacts, because I do think that my original idea was that artifacts are better for people who just kind of want to hop on, see the artifacts, what you should build on them, and then hop off. But, I mean, you could just skip to that part anyway. It doesn't matter too much. Either way. Yeah, let's get right into the video, and yeah, see you then. So first things first about those passives. Her first passive essentially means that whenever she uses her skill, we'll get into that a little bit further, she'll get a infusion, Geo infusion for 4 seconds, and during this time she will gain 40% normal attack, charge attack, and plunging attack bonus. I imagine Cloud Retainer, since she is supposed to be a plunge attack support, could make Navia a good, it could support Navia if you want to play plunge attack Navia. Anyway, this allows her to be such a good on-field DPS because the 40% damage bonus along with the Geo infusion is absolutely amazing, along with Farina. Her second passive just means that for every Electro, Pyro, Cryo, Hydro, you gain 20% attack. If you have two teammates with these elements, you gain 40%. But this really just makes it so that you don't have to run triple Geo teams. You run double Geo with like a Farina, or double Geo, double Pyro, and so on and so forth. Next, onto her attacks. I didn't include any text for her normal attacks because they're pretty basic if you can't see. It's just a fairly basic combo. She's doing a charge attack here, so that's a charge attack, but Navia's normal attacks is just a very basic combo. Her skill, of course, makes her have infusion, which will make this do quite a lot of damage, and there's nothing truly special about it. Nothing like Nuve, nothing like Farina. It's a decent portion of her damage, and it's pretty good. I mean, it's got very good scalings. Up next, her skill. If you want to read the wall of text, pause now. If you don't, totally understandable. Basically, her skill is a shotgun that you can gain extra stacks, so it fires more pellets. If you can get stacks from picking up crystallized shards on Navia, or through her burst, which every time her burst hits an enemy, or once every 2.4 seconds when her burst hits an enemy, it gives you a stack. And the way that her skill works is not like a shotgun, where if you hit 1 pellet, it does a base amount, or it does 1 times damage. If you hit 2 pellets, it does 2 times. That's not how it works. In this case, if you hit 1 pellet, it does the base amount of damage, which is about 610%. But if you hit any subsequent pellets, it'll do a multiplier onto that. So if you hit all 11 pellets, which is the max you can get from 3 stacks, you will do 2 times that number. So you go from 710 on one enemy to about 420 or 1420. Next, onto Navia's burst. As you can see from that amazing animation, it does 1 instance of decent damage and then continues to fire down cannon fire. Not a very large portion of her damage, but what it makes up in is the skill stack generation, because it creates 1 every 2.4 seconds, and during that time it applies a lot of Geo, so you're going to get a lot of Geo crystallized reactions, making Navia's skill stacks a lot easier to get. Next, we have artifacts. Of course, a little heat of warning, a lot of these require you to have Farina on your team, so be careful if you don't have Farina. Her best in slot is obviously Marechaussee. Genshin really screwed up when they made Marechaussee. It is just way too good. Then her 6th set, which gives her 18% attack, and then 20% Geo without a crystallized shield, and 50% Geo damage with one. Then Vermilion, if you have Farina, and then any 2-piece attack, 2-piece Geo. If you're not running on a Farina team, it's really only Sig or 2-piece. And I mean, I guess you could run something weird like 4-piece Archaic, but there's not much else you can really run. Moving on to what you want on those artifacts, of course you're going to want an attack percent Sands, a Geo percentage Goblet, and any crit percentage Circlet, depending on what you need. So if it's a attack substat weapon, you want to use crit rate, and vice versa. And some important stat rules that you want on those weapons specifically are crit percentage, any ER percentage, and attack percentage. Yeah, it is to be of note that Navia does have ER requirements, so sometimes you may need an ER weapon or an ER Sans or just some high ER rolls, but it's really dependent on your team, and I wouldn't worry too much about it unless you're on those really high ER teams, which she does have, to be fair. Next, moving on to weapons, of course we have her signature, Verdict, high base attack, medium crit rate, 22.1 crit rate, 674 base attack. Its passive gives you a bit of attack, and then whenever you pick up crystallized shards, it'll make Navia's skill do more damage, which again, skill is a good portion of your damage, so this is very good, and it does quite greatly outclass most of the other options. Though in sub DPS teams, a weapon I'll talk about later might be slightly better than it, but that weapon has a lot of jank associated with it, so I'm not too certain. Next up, specifically in Farina teams, Navia's second best weapon is Wolf's Gravestone with a 608 base attack and 49.6% attack. Its passive gives you 20% attack, and when enemies are under 30% HP, it gives you 40% more attack. It's just a ton of damage, and specifically on Farina teams, where you're getting a ton of damage bonus and a ton of crit from Marechaussee, that is exactly what you want, making this weapon just very, very good, which is quite nice. I quite like the fact that a 1.0 weapon specifically from the standard banner is doing so well now. Next we have her sometimes second, sometimes third best weapon, Serpent Spine. It is the battle pass weapon, so it is very much more available than the other two. It has 510 base attack and it gives you crit rate, and then whenever you're on field for 4 seconds, you gain a bit more damage percentage, and this can stack a bunch of times. But the biggest downside is that whenever you take damage, you lose 1 stack. This weapon heavily favors you using Zhongli instead of like Albedo on your teams, which I'll talk about later. But if you have Zhongli, this weapon is certainly going to be amazing, but if you don't, it's kind of wishy-washy depending on how well you can dodge and how well the crystallized shields stay up. And then next, onto her most free-to-play friendly option, we have Tidal Shadow, which is a Fontaine craftable. It gives you 510 base attack, and then it gives you 41.3% attack percentage as its substat. And then its passive, whenever you get healed, your attack percent will be increased from 24 to 48%, depending on refinements. Basically, this has the exact same reasoning as Wolves. It's just Farina gives you so much stats that attack percent is very good, and I mean, it's a very good weapon for being free to play. Honestly, all the Fontaine craftables are very good. Up next, we have the weapon which I was talking about earlier, which is very good as a skill, or when you're sub-DPSing Navia, and could be her best in slot as sub-DPS Navia. Sacrificial Greatsword has a base attack of 565 and a substat of ER, which it gives you 30.6% ER. It's passive. Whenever you hit a skill, there is a certain amount of chance to renew that skill. So if you E once, and if you skill once, and it hits that percentage, you get your skill back. And the funny thing is, with Navia, the Numa/Ouija thing that comes down counts as another skill proc, which means you have a very good chance of proccing the passive. The only downside is that at lower refinements, you do have the issue of it having 30 seconds long before you can proc it again, and that's kind of janky to play around. At high refinements, you don't really have to play around this, but there's some other jank that comes with just using the sword in general. Next, we have some team recommendations with Navia. Of course, I don't know everything that's going to happen, so there might be a couple of changes, and we don't know, but as of now, these are her best teams. Right now, hyper carry Navia, or should I say, it's not really hyper carry, because you do have you have a sub DPS, and you have technically 2 if you run Albedo, but her best team as a main DPS is obviously is this team, Navia, Farina, Bennett/Mika, and Zhongli or Albedo. My preferred is Navia, Farina, Mika, Albedo, just because Farina is buffing Albedo so much that Zhongli's Resistance Shred isn't actually doing enough to beat out Albedo's damage, which I quite like the fact that Albedo is quite good. Also, Albedo does create a lot more particles than Zhongli if he can hit, and that's also very, very important for Navia, because again, she does have ER requirements, and with Albedo on that team, her ER requirements are non-existent, to be frank. So when you don't have Farina, however, you can run this team, which has been coined Naviational. I don't like that. It's kind of boring. I personally like to call it Sunglassional because, you know, Navia's sunglasses. I think that's quite funny. But it's just quite a good team. Xiangling's doing a decent amount of damage. Navia is doing a very good portion of your team's damage. And then Albedo / Zhongli, depending on who you think's better. I think they're both about the same on this team, though Albedo probably does still push ahead because of his higher energy generation for Navia. Next, we have the general, like, sub-DPS category, because, of course, she can be run as a sub-DPS. In this case, I'm just showing you what she could do in, like, a Nuve team, because just replacing Fischl with Navia is probably going to be plenty fine. Basically, anywhere where you could put Albedo beforehand, you could put Navia, as long as that team really didn't need the EM bonus that Albedo is giving, which if they didn't need it, then Navia is probably just a direct upgrade. If they did, there might be some clash. I don't know exactly. It depends on the team. I can't say for certain. Now we come to the fun part. The time in the video where I tell you that you've watched the damn video, so pull the character. And guess what? This is no damn exception. You watched the full damn video up to 11:30 for 11 minutes and 30 seconds. You know, you might not have, but I mean, if you skip to this part, you watched the video anyway, so pull the damn character if you want the character. There's nothing bad. She's not bad. She's very good. She's a very good main DPS. She's a very good sub DPS. She's a Geo character, so she's very versatile. Please pull for the characters that you like, and unless the main reason that you like characters is for damage, then pull for the characters that you like. Still, yeah. Anyway, pull for Navia. You watched the damn video. Now that we know that you're gonna get the character, let's talk about her constellations to see if you want them. Starting off, her C1, essentially whenever you hit an opponent with your skill, you gain a bit of energy and your burst cooldown goes down 1 second. You can do this 3 times for a maximum of 9 energy gained and 3 seconds down in your burst. It's not amazing. I would personally not go just for the C1. The weapon is much better than the C1. Her C2 is very good, however. Basically, every single stack that you gain on her E will increase your crit rate on her E up to 36%, which is amazing. And then whenever you do this, you get a burst hit from the sky, like the little cannonballs that fall from the sky will come down and will hit your enemy. It's not a ton of damage extra from the burst hit, but the crit rate alone is just so damn good to where I honestly, I would go for it even if it just was the crit rate. Next, we have her C3 and C4. Her C3 basically just gives you some talent levels to her skill. That's amazing. Like, most of her damage comes from her skill, so very, very large buff. Her C4, whenever you hit a enemy with your burst, that Geo Resonance, or their Geo Resonance will go down by 20%. It's just Zhongli E for free. Both of these constellations are very good. If you're at C2, and going to C3 or C4 really doesn't matter. If you get C3, amazing. If you get C4, even better. Both of them are just amazing constellations. Next, her C5 and C6. Her C5 gives you a bit more damage on your burst. It's not amazing, it's not bad, it's just your burst isn't doing enough damage to where it's truly worth it. And then her C6 basically does the same thing as her C2, but is crit damage. And by God, it's insane. It's every single shard you get, 45% crit damage. You get 36% crit rate from C2. You get 135% crit damage from C6. It is insanely good. I would honestly, C2, C3, C4, C6, all of those amazing constellations, and that is what you should go for if you're going for Navia. It's constellations. If you're going for C1, just get her signature. If you're going for C5, please don't. But either way, all of her constellations besides her C1 and C5 are absolutely amazing. It's just wow. I haven't seen a character with this many good constellations besides Rio. And guess what the issue with Rio was? Yeah, she doesn't have that though. So clap, 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 clap. Very good. Well, yeah, thank you for watching the entire video. If you have, if you haven't, then watch the video. Or why the hell are you watching this portion? Anyway, if you have watched the entire video and you enjoyed it, please drop a like and maybe subscribe. I don't know. If you think it's good, subscribe. Though I don't know myself. Either way, it's 12:30 for me. I still have to add audio to this, and this is going to be so much fun. Peace.